Our guest on today's podcast is author and journalist Tommy Shea, whose book Dingers, the 101 Most Memorable Home Runs in Baseball History, is being released on paperback on May 17th. You can get that online or at your local bookstores. Tommy, thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Hey, it's nice to be here, and I appreciate you having me.
I know.
And you just told me something I didn't know, that the book is coming out May 17th. I thought it was in April.
Yeah, no, it's coming out then. Like I said, Amazon, definitely a good go-to place for that. I know myself, it was bleak days for baseball here, but I know we're finally going to have some baseball here coming up this week.
Oh, I'm to be honest, I don't know how you felt about it, but I really thought we'd be looking at Memorial Day.
Yeah, it was great for a while.
Yeah, so I'm very pleased that we're going to have baseball this week. That's when life begins again, right?
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. It's that time of year. The winter is finally gone. I just love when baseball finds off. You get the crack of the bat, and pitchers and catchers reporting got delayed, but it's finally here. Spring training's kicked off. So now let's get into your background a little, Tommy. So like I said, you're a journalist and an author. You worked in the Springfield area for a while as a journalist, a 40-year career. I know you covered some sports during that time. Maybe tell me a little bit about your background there.
Yeah, I started in sports, and I covered, I like to tell people that I don't know, I covered the Sandlots to the World Series, and I was very lucky. I covered high school sports for a long time. And then in 1980, I started covering the Red Sox. So I covered the Red Sox from 1980 to 1985. And basically, I knew all the people who were on the 86 team. That was my last year. They were actually fairly mediocre. They were like 81 and 81 under John McNamara. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that was advantageous to me when covering that is that the city of Holyoke had a double-A team. And it was a Brewer farm team and a California Angel farm team, but they played the Bristol Red Sox, 18 times a year. So I got to see like Wade Boggs and Marty Barrett and Rich Gedman and Bruce Hurst, back before they became who they became. And baseball, well, it has always been... it was the first thing I ever fell in love with all by myself, as a kid. I grew up a Yankees fan in Springfield, Massachusetts. And but
I knew that before.
Yeah, no, I know. That's what most people say. That's what most people say. And I got the 1964 pennant. I was 9 years old. The Yankees had a ferocious comeback to win the pennant, and they lost in 7 games to the St. Louis Cardinals. And I was a little kid, and I came home crying because I watched the game at a cousin's house, and my next door neighbor said, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "Well, the Yankees lost." And he goes, "Don't worry about it. They win every year." And that's when they went into the big dive. So for most of my childhood or teenage years, early adulthood, the Yankees weren't very good. But it makes you a better baseball fan. It teaches you loyalty. It's not always about winning,
Yeah, I know I got that as a young Red Sox fan. So, I mean, I grew up in 86. So I, lived right there through it. I wasn't there right for, of course, all the stuff that happened in 86, but I earned my badge before then. And, one of the home runs featured in your book is a chapter I skipped, which was the Aaron Boone chapter. And that was the thing. That was the big one for me starting out. And of course, next year we got redemption, but that was one of the big ones for me, was that Aaron Boone home run, as far as, the Red Sox and just coming up short.
Well, it's funny that Aaron Boone, and you probably know this, is, the Yankees had acquired him in midseason, and he really played very poorly for them. He wasn't the answer. Mm-mm. And even at that point in the game,
I was not expecting that at all.
No, and well, that's why they play the games. Is that the most unlikely hero, and well, is that Tim Wakefield was and is so valuable for the Red Sox, and it just was a game that wouldn't end. And
Yeah.
this too, is Aaron Boone had a long-term contract with the Yankees, and the following February it became 04, he was playing a pickup basketball game in his house, and he tore his knee up.
Mm-hmm.
And he admitted to the Yankees that he had injured himself, and that's when the Yankees went out and got Alex Rodriguez.
Yeah, another one too, because that was a big bidding war there too, with the Red Sox going at it, trying to get him. And now talking about that injury, I guess we can diverge a little bit. Have you heard about the Fernando Tatis stuff with him?
I know.
Like him riding motorcycles in the off season and then having vague injuries that didn't coincide with the motorcycle accidents, but he had like 5 of them.
I don't know this for a fact, but I know even in my time, around big league executives and big league players, there were clauses in contracts that couldn't do that stuff. And I assumed, which is not a good place to be coming from, a place of assumption, but I would figure that would be so rare.
Yeah.
But clearly it's not.
Yeah, I mean, you expect the better decision making, but too, like I'd expect the clauses in the contract as well. So I'm surprised to see what will happen there as things kind of progress, and see, hopefully his rehab's quick. But if he hits any hitches there, it's going to be a big blow for the Padres.
Well, right. I always I was educated by nuns, Sisters of St. Joseph, and they would always talk about putting yourself in the other person's shoes. And so, let's say in San Diego, expectations were very, very high. And this kind of an injury, just like you said, when do you think he'll be back?
I mean, they said, I think they were predicting June right now, but I mean, that could be one of those things that gets pushed then to the All-Star break, because they're like, oh, we'll see where it is. And then who knows where the Dodgers are at that point. Where the Padres are at that point, because the Dodgers loaded up too, and you got to play them 19 times, and you'll probably face them at least maybe 7 to 9 times before the All-Star break. So who knows where the Padres could be at.
Let's hope we're wrong, and that it is July 1 that he comes back. But I don't know. I remember like reading that like first thing in the morning, whatever it was, 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. And I go, oh, geez.
Yeah.
But he's very young. What is he, 23?
Yeah. I mean, he was probably one of the guys who was like hoping that the lockout would last a little bit longer to push this off, rehab a little bit, so it wouldn't look as bad.
Well, as you know, that the people who negotiated the lockout voted against the package. As the rank and file players, and maybe there's more of them that had other reasons than economic reasons to vote for the contract. That's an excellent point. That's a really good point.
Yeah, so definitely, but I'm excited for this year to see how it goes.
So what's your favorite home run in Red Sox history?
So, I mean, I was going to get to it. So the book, of course, we got 101 home runs to go over. I really enjoyed reading the book. I'm going to say it's a good toilet book is what I refer to it as. The chapters are short. You can get a quick read in. It's perfect for that. But I think one of the great jobs that you and your co-author Josh Schifrin did was setting the scene for each home run. You kind of put the people in the stand so they kind of felt like they were there. I know some of them you described the weather, and you just like a crisp night, you put the temperature in there. It was amazing the detail you guys put into the book.
Well, as you know, you're a sports fan. It all creates, like you try to remember back, and doing baseball research is not very difficult. It's actually fun.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where the winter we first did the book, it was like a bad winter up here, and outside our house is a main drag, and all I could hear were snow plows going through, the scraping of snow plows. But inside my head, there were green fields and a park lit up,
Yep.
and someone digging in to hit a home run. And, like I say, Florida Fair. I was already in Florida in my head doing this. So it is fun. I mean, like baseball, to me, what I liked your idea of the toilet book, because my thing, I always thought it was just a book for like summer arguments.
That too. I mean, it's great for the beach. Like anytime you just want to wind back and just kind of dive deep and put yourself in some historic places, it's excellent. But I mean, that's the quick thing that came in my mind.
I like how you
quick
said
chapters.
I like how you said that, in historic places. And like one of the home runs that I really liked, like including, because everything is, your list would be different than
yours there's a few Yankee moments in there.
Oh no, you know what the thing is? Most Red Sox fans said to me, "Boy, you have a lot of Ted Williams moments in there," which I thought was true. And if you need any suggestions about Ted Williams' books, you can't go wrong with Lee Montville's book on Ted Williams. You grew up in Boston? Do you remember Lee?
I don't.
No, he ended up at Sports Illustrated. He also did a big book on Babe Ruth, and he just did a book, I think it's called Tall Men, Short Pants, and it's about how he covered the 1968-69 Celtics. But anyways, there's now, do you remember Tony Conigliaro?
So yeah, that was one of the good reads, or one of the parts that I enjoyed. I mean, as a Boston fan, I always hear about Tony C and the history behind it. In reading your book, I didn't realize he had that like couple of years of success following the injury, and then kind of things. Because me coming as a younger person, I thought once the injury happened, that was the end of it.
Yeah, no, and well, you're an educated man. That sometimes the best stories are the whatever happened to stories. And let's say like with Tony Conigliaro, as like when I was a boy, he was, obviously I didn't know when I was 9, 10, 11, 12 years old that he might beat Babe Ruth's record. But after his first, I'm poor at math, 4 or 5 years, he was on that trajectory. And the fact is that Fenway Park at that time was, like a right-handed hitters.
Perfect.
Yeah, and they had built a good team, and when it happened, I mean, like anytime you include blindness in a sentence about someone who swings a bat for a living, you figure, well, that's it. Well, it really was a remarkable comeback. And I remember the opening day against Baltimore, and it must have been like school vacation week, and I was getting my glove sewn back together again, and I watched it in like the shoemaker's shop in our neighborhood. And I was a young kid, and I said, I can't believe he hit a home run. And the guy turns to me and he goes, think about what that guy did. Think about what he did, that he was blind and missed 2 years. And he was, and his comeback attempts were amazing. Like he had a great arm, and he tried to be a pitcher. And
yeah, that was what you noted in the book. And then that was another thing where I think Ted Williams was mentioned in that home run too, when you were talking about him, like Conigliaro was noted as a guy that crowded the plate.
Oh yeah.
You know what? Where too, you set the scene perfectly. Where like I think you had someone on scene describe the sound of the ball hitting his face, sounded like a watermelon squishing.
Yeah, and I can't say, like watching that game in April of 1969. Just 50. Well, it's a lot of years now, but you couldn't hear it on the little TV, but that's what people said who were there, and my source on that was Bob Ryan of the Boston Globe.
Mm-hmm.
And again, as someone like you who goes to games, you can hear what's going on in the field, and something as dramatic as that. But
especially a place like Fenway too, because everything's so close. And like I've been to other ballparks, like I went to Milwaukee and the new Brewers Field, and I just grabbed a quick ticket for the fourth deck, and I felt like I had vertigo. I was so far away from the field and so high up compared to like Fenway, where no matter where you're sitting, you're next to everybody.
Wow, you just scare me. I wouldn't like in very tall ballparks. Who's your second favorite team then? If you're a Red Sox fan, do you have a second favorite?
I mean, I had family out in Arizona, so I was like the Diamondbacks. So I was happy when they beat the Yankees for sure in 01. That was a big thrill for me, and Gonzalez's little bloop there over for Rivera. But again, there you had a home run mentioned there. I think you had Scott Brocious in there. Is that right? For that one?
Oh, and that that's why I couldn't complain too much of that World Series, is that the Yankees had back-to-back really Carlton Fisk kind of games where it was Tino and Brocious, and like they were completely out of those games, and then suddenly they win them. And I must admit, when Soriano hit the home run, I think in the 8th inning of the 7th game of the World Series, I thought it was. Yep. Because one thing that happened, and in that game, is Mariano Rivera is an excellent fielder. Mm-hmm. He's one of the better defensive pitchers of all time, and he never throws away so it's
I think it was Womack.
Tony Womack. Jeez, you're giving me bad memories here now.
I had to do it as a Yankee fan, because one of the things I'll bring up in this book, because you asked me like my favorite Red Sox and my favorite Red Sox home runs, auspiciously missing from your book here is any mentions of 04 Red Sox.
Oh no, it'll be in paperback.
Perfect. Yeah, I was going to ask you if you guys added anything for the paperback.
Yeah. It's called Extra Innings. That was a shameful omission. And what it came down to is Poppy had so many that it ended up on the shelf. But yeah, Poppy is in this one. Don't worry.
I would go through the book waiting to see it, and then now I'm like, oh well, I think I'd have David Ortiz over this home run and that home run. But I'm glad you guys amended it here. Do you know what other home runs you guys included in the paperback? Because I made a little list of ones that I think might make.
You should let me hear your list.
So of course I had the 04 David Ortiz walk-off home run in game 4. And then I was thinking, if you guys were only going to pick one, also in the running should be Johnny Damon's home run in game 7. Because that kind of set the tone there as they would win the game.
The funny thing about, and I said this as a Yankee fan, Johnny's didn't make it. You know which one has made various shortlists is Daniel Nava's first home run and a grand slam.
Yeah.
Remember that?
That one too. I mean, I think Travis Shaw had the similar situation. His first one for the Red Sox was a home run. I think he had a grand slam too.
I did. Now, see that I didn't know, to be honest, and I'm very familiar.
I remember him. Yeah,
Travis Shaw.
Also for Ortiz, I had 2013 ALCS game tying grand slam against the Tigers. Not sure if that made it.
No, no. But Poppy is in this time. See, other ones we missed is I campaigned for Bartolo Colon.
Yeah. For sure.
I don't know what was he, 45, 46, and he's a guy that's been in and out of the big leagues and was not a good hitter. And then Mike Piazza's home run after 9/11, and but Poppy is in. I mean, obviously.
I'm glad he made the cut this time.
Well, he should have made the cut the first time. And the interesting thing, I'll go back to Johnny's grand slam. That's when I knew. I don't know what kind of fan you are, in the sense of like, I don't subscribe to the theory that Dave Roberts' stolen base turned the whole series around. That's just me, mainly because I believe the Red Sox were an outstanding team that year. They were really good. And I thought they were going to beat the Yankees in that series. Now, obviously, when you go up 3-0, the Yankees
19-8 victory in Game 3, which was just demoralizing.
Right.
I sat in the dark in my room at the University of Arizona, just questioning what I was going to do with myself. I might have to quit sports.
Wow, see, now I'd like to hear that story. But again, but you showed up the next night and watched.
I did.
Then
the next night, and the next night, and then 4 more nights, and after that.
But for me, it was, and I'm not sure what inning it was. It was an extra inning. Tony Clark hit a ball into the right field corner at Fenway, and game was tied. Let's say it was the 13th inning or something like that. Hit the ball, and I thought it's going to roll around, and the Yankees will score and then put them up, and then they win in the bottom of the inning, or the Yankees hold off the Red Sox in the bottom of the inning. Well, anyways, the ball went in for a ground rule double.
Mm-hmm.
Run didn't score.
Yeah.
And let's say I'm saying this just for me. That's when I felt it like you would feel it, where I go, whoa.
Yeah, I'm a big feeling in sports guy. I know, like, if we go back to the 13 David Ortiz, I'm also kind of a little bit superstitious. So when the good thing starts happening, I maintain that. So I think I laid on the living room floor in my Florida apartment for about an hour and a half until that home run happened.
We're talking the same language. There's different, that obviously analytics would say we're nutty, that we're foolish. But like I would say, no. Sometimes you get the feeling, and I got the feeling, And I'm also one of those people, and I know friends of mine, again, think I'm silly, but I wouldn't have taken Pedro out in 03.
No.
Because I go, I'd rather lose with my best pitcher.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Than someone else.
I'll go down with Pedro any day of the week. You give me Pedro, I'll ride him till he dies.
Then we should have a long train ride and talk. I agree with you. And again, and this is where baseball, you can get into the weeds, and I like the weeds, is the pop-up that Posada hit under normal circumstances would have been a pop-up that would have been caught. But because everybody was playing back,
mm-hmm.
It wasn't even, he didn't hit the ball hard. He just hit it high, and everybody comes running in, and I don't know. I mean, but that's what makes, to me, baseball interesting is now, how do you feel about the Red Sox this year?
I'm very excited, of course. I'm a big fan of the Trevor Story signing. I'm just worried about where the team's going to be in 2 years from now, because you have so much talent in the infield that some of these guys are going to go, but I think they're in a great spot because right now you got JD as your DH for another year, maybe 2. Then I think you're going to have to slide Dahlbach into that role because you have Tristan Cassis coming up, and he's going to be the first baseman of the future. Yep. And now this year they're going to have Story, I think, play second, Xander at short, Devers at third, and then I think you got Nick York pipelining up very quickly, and then you got Marcelo as well in the pipeline. So a lot of talent in the middle infield, and then Devers is going to be needing a new contract. So I think he's going to end up being the future DH. Xander is going to have to probably move to third once Meyer comes up, and then the middle infield, or you'll have Story also at short. Like, there's just so much talent in the middle infield right now for the Red Sox.
I love talking to guys like you because you know that you can see the future, you know what I mean? And I like seeing the future. And the reason why I say that is it all stems back to me when the Yankees were poor when I was a kid. You know, they were, let's say, the year after 1964, they finished sixth. The following year, they finished 10th. The year the Red Sox, the impossible dream team, in '67, the Yankees finished ninth. So you get the drift of how bad the Yankees had gotten. And the whole hope was in the minor league system. Who was coming up? Who was going to be the and yeah, the Red Sox. I mean, you know, basically, how do you pronounce his last name? Is it Marcella or Marella?
I think it's Marcelo Meyer.
Yeah.
I mean, part of being a fan and like loving your team too is like having that farm system that you can see these guys come up and grow. Like I'm glad the Red Sox, you know, had some success with Dave Dombrowski, but he was just mortgaging the future just to get new guys in. Where I like where Chaim Bloom's doing, where he's, you know, developing these guys, drafting good talent. Everyone thought he overdrafted for Nick York, and now he's one of the top prospects in baseball. So I think the track that they're on is very good, and I'm excited to see how the future develops.
Well, I think the Red Sox are, you know, again, let's say this year, I would say you'll go as far as your pitching takes you. And obviously the Chris Sale injury is big, because that's another knotty injury. You know what I mean? That's, again, one of those ones that you can't say, well, I guess you could say, but I don't know if you'd be full of real hope saying, oh, he'll be back by May 1.
Yeah,
you know, I
don't know what you can do. And so that was the thing you're worried about too, is he always had injury history, and you're like, okay, maybe he won't, maybe he'll be the guy that we had in 2018. And then the second he gets the deal, injuries just pop up left and right now.
Those are the things. Do you play fantasy baseball?
Yes, heavily. I'm in a 10-year dynasty league right now.
You're in the midst of a 10-year dynasty?
I am. This is year 11.
What's the name of your team?
Right now we're the Boggs group.
The Boggs.
A Wade Boggs reference, but also a reference to the show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Very good. I like that.
Thank you.
Well, then again, you're speaking my language.
Yeah, the episode was they did a cross-country drinking challenge, because the story was about how Wade Boggs, I think, drank 60 beers on a cross-country trip to Seattle. So the gang had a drinking contest to mimic that.
That is true about the way, you know, one of the last baseball books I read is called The Bottom of the 33rd. And it's about the longest game in baseball history. And it was the Pawtucket Red Sox against the Rochester Red Wings.
No, I think you guys referenced that in the book, because I know one of the home runs you talked about was the Harold Baines home run in like the 25-inning game, I believe.
Oh, yeah. See, Harold obviously he was rumored to be traded to the Yankees a whole bunch of times. I'm not sure if he's a Hall of Famer, though. You know,
I'm not. I mean, yeah. I mean, he was lucky the year they got in. I mean, I was never a big Harold Baines guy. Of course, I saw him towards the tail end of his career, but
yeah.
Nothing jumped off the page that said it to me. Harold Baines was the Hall of Famer.
Yeah. I agree. Don't get me wrong. I'd like him playing for the Yankees this year and as a left-handed stick. But hey, well, good luck on. What's the key to your team then? What do you draft?
Right now, we've been in a little bit of a downward spiral the last couple of years, but I got some young talent I'm hoping will develop. I traded for Francisco Lindor last year, and he had a terrible year, but I traded him for Alex Bregman straight up, who also had a terrible year. So
terrible year. Oh, yeah. Let's put this way. Again, it's amazing you bring up Lindor, because he was the guy that I was hoping the Yankees would acquire. And I didn't think the Mets package for him was all that top heavy, you know what I mean? And the Yankees could have pulled something on that, and I would have given him the big money too. I thought Lindor was like the best player I would have wanted, let's say this time. What happened to it?
I said that, so I don't know what happened to it, but I had the exact same thought when the Yankees signed DJ LeMahieu, because I really wanted DJ LeMahieu. I thought he filled the perfect role for the Red Sox, and then he goes to the Yankees and has just an awesome year.
Yeah. Now, when is your draft?
Next week, but I think right now I'm keeping most of my team, so I don't think I'm even going to draft.
Oh, that's good.
We have 25 rounds, and I think I'm keeping at least 25 players.
Wow. Wow, boy, you have confidence in your people.
I don't. I'm just worried that there's not a lot of depth out there.
Well, the thing I always did, and clearly you're way ahead of me, but the thing I always did was try to, in drafting, I knew all the categories. Obviously you'd go for stolen bases and, home runs.
Yeah, we have the 5x5.
What are your 5?
Right now, it's just batting average. For hitters, it's batting average, home runs, RBIs, steals, and runs scored. But I'm one of those guys who wants to switch from batting average to OBP.
Well, what do you call it? Runs scored that's a fabulous category.
Yeah.
But what I wanted when I tended to have Cal Ripken Jr. and Bernie Williams on many teams I had because they were never injured.
Yeah.
And I'd get something from them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Let's say that it wasn't, I got, like when a guy's injured, you don't get anything. And so I was always spooked by people that tended to have injuries.
So you were playing fantasy back in the day then?
Early. Yes, when it was called Rotisserie League.
When did you start?
Great question. I'm not sure quite. I can think of one year I won it because do you remember Brady Anderson?
Of course, Brady Anderson.
From the Baltimore Orioles.
You had him when he hit his 50 home runs?
Didn't expect the 50 home runs. I was expecting the 50 steals. Mm. So let's say he steals his 43 bases, steals 50 home runs. Well, and I think that might have been the same year. Have you heard of Carlos Delgado?
Of course, Carlos Delgado, yeah.
Well, Carlos Delgado was injured.
Mm-hmm. And he was with Toronto at the time, I think, right?
You are good. You should be the commissioner or something.
I try. So when you were doing fantasy, my dad did home run derbies. So basically him and his buddies, they did just a dumbed down version of fantasy where they just drafted guys for home runs strictly. So he would have these lists of guys for home runs, all these years. I would help him draft his team some years. So we had Carlos Delgado a couple years.
Well, you probably had him the year where he missed the first 2 months of the season, but I had drafted him at the end of the draft. And let's say he comes back May 15th and he ended up with 40 home runs or whatever it was. It was a complete bargain in my end. That it's now, who do you have a feeling about this year? Is there a Red Sox that you feel? Let's say I
just want Devers just keep building. I don't want him to have a regression year. I think he's been doing well, whereas step by step he's getting better each year. I just think he's going to end up being the DH. So because his glove has just been a little bit suspect the last couple of years, just as far as consistency. But I think once, like I said, moving forward, if he gets moved to DH, then a guy like Dahlbeck might have to go to the outfield because he's a guy who could be 35, 40 home run guy. And you don't want to just get rid of him because, again, you have all this talent. But that's where you got to hopefully draft guys that have the ability to play multiple positions. So I'm hoping maybe Dahlbeck pops into the outfield and then maybe bump Verdugo over to center a little bit, see what he wants to do there.
See, I'm with you on Dahlbeck. Dahlbeck is, to me, he's just like a raw kid who still ended up with 20. What did he end up with last year? 25, 28 home runs?
I think it was 28. Yeah, it was about that.
That's but I also thought he'd be trade bait for one of those.
I'm worried about. I think that's what he might end up being this year, depending on how the rotation shapes up. I have Tanner Houck on my fantasy team. I'm expecting a good year from Tanner Houck. I like what he did last year, and I think he has the molds to be a top of the rotation guy. Not necessarily a number one, but he can definitely be a number two, solid number two. So
what are they doing with Whitlock then?
I think he's going to be in the back end for sure. So I don't know if he's going to be the closer out of the gates, but I think that's the role I'd like him to assume by the All-Star break.
So what is your rotation now? Because I don't think you can count on Sale.
Well, that's it. So you definitely, it's Sale's the question mark, but you'll have Houck, you'll have Pavetta, you got Michael Wacha we signed as well. Then we'll see what Sale can do. and then Nate Eovaldi, of course, he'll end up, being the number one out the gates. And then they got young guys too. Like I was just watching a video of Brian Ballo, who's everyone's just hyping him because he has there's a Twitter video today that it's sequencing him next to Pedro Martinez, and they look identical in their form.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's getting a lot of hype right now.
And what have you seen anything of Jay Groom?
So Groom's a guy I had on my fantasy team who, we drafted so long ago with expectations, but I'd like to see what he can do. I have a whole lot of faith in him. He has a good pedigree, but if he can put it all together.
Oh no, he's another one that I'm fascinated by. Hardcore baseball fans or Red Sox fans will know this. He had trouble coming out of high school, and he fell in the draft.
Yeah, I think he's a Jersey guy, right? I think he's
yeah, and he was going to be the number one pick in the whole draft. And see, one thing when I covered baseball and like covering high school baseball is among my favorite people in the entire world are scouts, because they really know their stuff, that they can show up at a field and go, I like that person. And you go, that's not even the best person on the team. And it can translate. A lot of luck goes into, as you know, making the big leagues, that you don't get hurt or you don't end up behind somebody who's a supernova or whatever. But, and even the Yankees just today signed Shelby Miller, who is going to be a very, very big deal at one time. And I do believe he's the number one draft choice. And probably Shelby Miller hasn't done anything in, let's say, 5 years, but teams will give number one or high draft choices chance after chance, and sometimes you do get lucky.
I don't saw that with like a guy like Matt Bush, who was drafted like number one overall, had his demons, all that, ended up coming back and relieving with the Rangers.
Well, you are good that you would know Matt Bush.
There's just random facts in his brain.
Yeah. Now, have you ever interviewed any of the Saber guys?
I haven't.
Oh, they're kind of interesting cats.
Yeah, I'll have to reach out to them.
I'm sorry?
I'll have to reach out to them.
Yeah, they're talk about people who know baseball, and you're one of them. You do you ever look up biographies in Saber? They really have.
I don't. My sports love fell back in the day where they used to do these little I forget what they were called. They're like, they started with animal facts when I was a kid, but they turned to sports facts. So it had all these binders of just like, it was one page of a player and just had tons of stuff on them. So I would just like do that, then learn. And then I told you, like, my sports information background, I've always just been a stats junkie.
Oh no, that's a good background. It keeps you out of trouble. Let's say like these folks, they end up getting tremendous guests, tremendous guests, but and it was monthly, but then the pandemic put everything on the shelf for a good long time. But now, how do you think the Yankees will do this year?
I don't know. I just saw I think I saw something again today on Twitter that the projections of they gathered a bunch of different analysts who put their win totals of what they expect for everybody, and I think the Yankees about 92, and they have the Red Sox at 85, which I expect is drastically low for the Red Sox.
See, that's very high for the Yankees.
I think they should flip those two.
Yeah, see, I don't really like this Yankee team. The only upsides I can see is, let's say, Joey Gallo having a really good year, but he was so terrible last year.
Yeah. And then him coming out and complaining about them in the shift and everything is just ridiculous. Like, dude, it's baseball. Like, we're going to play defense. Why don't you learn to hit the other way?
Well, of course. It's let's put this way, and now it's starting to get dated because Derek Jeter's already in the Baseball Hall of Fame, but I bet you Jeter showed bunt at least once or twice every game, and sometimes would bunt. and he would have the infield running around because he could bunt and he could beat out a bunt. And let's say if someone spent a weekend, any hitter, and you know this as well as I do, tapping the ball to left field because the left side of the infield is open, they would change the scouting report.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no question about that. But see, I don't really understand why they don't do it, because they do it in batting practice.
Yeah, as a hitter too, when you go to the plate, you want to hit to where there's gaps. You don't want to go, oh, let me hit to where there's 8 guys in the infield. Like, you should see that gap and be able to hit the ball there. You're a professional.
And you just did it at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whenever batting practice is. Now, did you think Alex Cora was going to come back as manager of the Red Sox?
Yeah, I did. I was very happy with, just because I think he got wrapped up in the whole thing with the Astros, and he caught a stray there and had to sit out a year. And he served his time, but he was a great manager when he was there. And I'm so thrilled he's back, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do. Obviously they overachieved last year with him, so I'm excited for more this year.
Who's the team you fear?
I mean, there's so much talent in the National League right now too. Right now, I'd have to say, I mean, I'm worried about what the Yankees are going to do. I looked at their payroll. Their payroll is $1 billion more than the second best team's payroll. So when you ever have that kind of money, you always have the ability to change your trajectory of your season on a dime. So I'll always be worried what they can do.
I wouldn't worry so much, because they're very obsessed with staying under salary cap.
Yeah.
And this year, for this year, they're already above 1, and they want to stay there, which disappoints me because they need. They needed a second starter. I mean, they really need a second starter desperately.
Yeah.
And I really don't like the alignment of the team. Let's say, while I thought Josh Donaldson was a really good baseball player, he's 35, 36.
Yeah, he can't be your everyday third baseman at this point.
Well, I think he's going to be at this point.
That's where I see, like, now they see Josh Donaldson's not going to be their everyday third baseman. So who are they going to go get to possibly be their third baseman? And when you have that kind of spending, the world's your oyster.
DJ is going to, DJ LeMay, who will play third. He'll play second. He'll also play first. I mean, DJ will be, someone who will get his 500 at bats. Again, I don't know in your rotisserie league or your fantasy league if someone catches for one game, he's qualified to be the catcher.
No, you have to start 5 or at least play.
Oh, okay.
You have to appear at 10 and then start 5, at least.
Appear in 10 and 10. Okay, you have stricter leagues than some of the leagues that. But DJ he'll be in left field, this and that. But my thing with the Yankees is, again. And obviously, it's easy to say from downtown Bonneville, Massachusetts now. But basically, the Twins were able to sign Correa.
Yeah, I think they had some good signings there. They were kind of under the radar. I mean, not under the radar, but I think they filled some good needs for them.
Well, again, I'm sure you would pay $30 million for Correa to play 1 year for you, have an opt-out after the first and second season. See, I'm always amazed when baseball teams don't front load contracts and just have somebody 5 years at $30 million. And
I was surprised to see the 10-year deals come back. Like, the Rangers, another team we could talk about there, with them giving Corey Seager a ton of money and Marcus Semien a ton of money. I've never been a big Marcus Semien guy. He's had a good couple of years, but I think they paid a ton of money for him that I don't think they should have.
Now, what do you think, Toronto?
I like Toronto. I mean, I'm excited to. I think the AL East. I think is going to be exciting to watch. I think the Rays are always doing something down there, and with Wander Franco now up for the whole year, he's going to be an exciting player to watch there. You have a ton of young talent up in Toronto with Vlad and Kevin Biggio and Bichette. They're just loaded too, and they got some young arms as well. So it's going to be a battle in the AL East this year for sure.
Oh no! Thank God for the Orioles. Someone has to.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about them.
Huh? You forgot
about them.
That's.
I mean, they didn't have at least the worst offseason, I'd say, this year. I think the A's had the worst offseason. I don't think they spent any money. Then did you see what the Orioles did today? Actually,
no.
So Mancini put in for arbitration at $8 million. They lowballed him and they offered him 7.3. So they wouldn't even give him the extra 600,000 he was looking for. They're like, no, you want 8, we'll give you 7.3. And I think John Means put in for like 5, and they gave him 4.2. They're like right there, but they're just penny pinching with their 2 good players.
See, John Means would look good in a Yankee in the pinstripes. He would be. I'd be happy with him as a number 2.
Yeah, but then like a guy like Trey Mancini with all he went through for your team, and he's like the face of your franchise right now, and we're gonna do arbitration. I mean, arbitration as a whole thing, I think, is just a disgrace and like puts teams and players in just terrible position. But for you to actually lowball a guy like Trey Mancini over 600K is ridiculous.
It is, because, as you know, if there was the 12-year-old you or the 12-year-old me, and we were rooting for a bad team, but had this one bright light, that's the reason why we'd be asking Daddy to take us to the park. And years after the fact, we go, oh yeah, Trey Mancini. Like, my guy was, well, he didn't have the story of Trey Mancini, but like Bobby Mercer in my mind is like, again, and if you went to a Cleveland Indian fan, they'd say, I barely remember him.
Yeah. See, I'm a Red Sox guy, but for me, my top 2 is, I mean, Ortiz is up there, but Griffey is my always number 1. I'm a huge Griffey guy. Yeah, like he was the best to watch. They always played the Mariners right around my birthday, Memorial Day, and for I think 3 straight years he got injured right before I'd go see him, so I missed out on him. But then in your book, just back to that, you shout out Edgar Martinez got a nice little shout out, and Pedro shouted him out as well in the book. But we were sitting right behind the batting circle for the visiting dugout. And Edgar Martinez had a rip in his pants. We're like, hey, Edgar, why don't you go reach out to Griffey? Maybe he'll buy you some new pants. And he looked back, gave us a smile. But I always liked Edgar because he was a stud DH, but I was always a Griffey guy.
Oh, no, Griffey was just beautiful to watch. I mean,
still would have been the best ever if not for those injuries, but what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Now, did you ever get autographs?
I was a big autograph guy. Well, my dad put it in. Our family's a huge sports memorabilia. I have a couple things on my shelf here, but you can't really tell. But at my house in Montana, it's loaded with stuff. So like I stayed after a Red Sox game. I met A-Rod in like '96 when he was coming up. I met Cal Ripken after a game. Just tons of guys. I remember meeting Brett Saberhagen randomly. Yeah.
Were they all nice to you?
Yeah, they were great. I have a whole ball signed by, I think, the '95 Orioles. I think Mike Mussina's on there, Robbie Alomar, a couple other guys.
Hey, that's 2 Hall of Famers right there. I mean, that's kind of. Have you been to the Hall of Fame?
When I was a kid, I went. I think '98, so I was 12 at the time. I think I threw 53 on the pitch machine, so I was proud of that at the time. But yeah, it was fun. Actually, when we were there, I got my Ken Griffey signed ball. It's up on my shelf there. I got that at the Hall of Fame when I was there.
As soon as you said 53, I played old man baseball until I was nearly 50.
Yeah.
And I played for the Red Sox.
Oh, nice. Congrats.
Uniform was very itchy, and I wore number 6, and because I could never wear Mickey Mantle's number 7. I'm not worthy.
He was your guy, right?
Oh yeah, Mickey Mantle. Matter of fact, I just watched a thing by accident on Netflix or HBO last night. There's a guy named John Lurie, Lurie, from Worcester, and I was aware of him that he was kind of a New York City hipster, played in like a jazz band, and he showed up in movies. Well, now he has a painting show on HBO, and I just saw it, and he's from Worcester, and he starts talking about how he had an uncle who got him tickets to the 1962 World Series. And he was a Yankee fan from Worcester. And he starts talking about Mickey Mantle. And honest to God, it was putting tears in my eyes. And, this was he was a hipster in New York. So I didn't think he was even into baseball. You know what I mean? That it was two different things. And he starts telling the story. And his father, it turns out, was a Giants fan, and they bet on the game a quarter, and it was a lovely little story. But so no, I would never take 7. But my second favorite Yankee as a kid was Roy White, and so Roy White wore 6, and that's why I wore 6. But sometimes you go to the local 7-Eleven after a game, and little kids would look at me. They assumed I was a baseball player. You know what I mean? Because I had black stuff and I was sweating. And why else would an adult man be in a baseball uniform on the middle of a Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, mine was number 9, but of course, as a Red Sox fan, you couldn't really wear that, so I would elect for 19 occasionally.
Ooh. Yeah. Now, have you read any of the big books on Ted Williams?
I haven't. I haven't taken the deep dive. My dad tells me about it, all the stories about Ted Williams, which is awesome because that's like a fun note I noted in your book too, is that we all know about Ted Williams and his military service and all that. I didn't know that Willie Mays took time out of baseball to actually serve in the military, which I learned.
Yeah, back then it was, Willie was probably gone for 18 months. Well, tell your father. See, I was lucky enough to meet Ted Williams, like in spring trainings, and he's the only big shot, prominent person I've ever met who had charisma. Whatever Ted Williams had, it echoed out, and he was one of those people that even if you didn't know he was Ted Williams, you knew somebody just walked into the room.
Yeah.
He had and if he was talking to you, his eyes never left you. You know what I mean? He wasn't looking at the guy behind you or the person over here. And I found him kind of a remarkable guy.
Yeah, I mean, his story is amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
You don't get guys like that anymore.
Well, I haven't met him, that's for sure. And, I think Dan Shaughnessy is the one who, underlines this, is that's the character John Wayne wanted to play, was Ted Williams, that basically he took that kind of, but, Ted Williams he wasn't playing any role. He was Ted Williams,
Yeah, and the fun facts too I learned in the book about Willie Mays too, about how he won 12 Gold Gloves, but they didn't create the award till his 6th season, which is remarkable. And then in the game that you referenced, the Willie Mays home run, it's just like there's a lot of history in that story. It was Juan Marichal versus Warren Spahn, and they both threw over 200 pitches in the game, which is outstanding. And then the next night, Warren Spahn threw another 200 pitches.
Let's just wait, and this is. Now, do you go to Worcester to see the?
I haven't. I'm in Enfield right now, so I live on the Mass Connecticut border. So I have gone to the Yard Goats lately.
Oh, good. It doesn't. That's excellent. I haven't been to either, but I hope to this summer. But the thing is, with minor league baseball, when Holyoke had the team, everybody came through. Let's say Ricky Henderson came through and befriended the bat boy, the visiting team bat boy. And so the visiting team bat boy ended up with Ricky, when Ricky was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Real personal relationships are made. in minor leagues. And
I wish that happened in my minor league experience.
what do
when I lived in Missoula, in Montana, we have a minor league baseball team out there who, I guess they're not a minor league team anymore. However, they changed thing a couple of years ago, but they were affiliated with the Diamondbacks at the time, the Missoula Osprey. So they had some players come through there, and I was actually the bat boy for the team. And on the team, they had two guys. I don't think they're going to go be Hall of Famers, but Carlos Gonzalez and Miguel Montero. So those are my two big guys that I worked for as a bat boy. So I didn't form those relationships though that the other guy did though.
What do you call it? How did you get that job? That's really cool.
Well, just my want to be in sports. I'm like, hey, let me go apply for the local minor league baseball team. So I worked for them for one summer as a bat boy and then another summer as their promotions team guy. So on the field doing all the stupid games, rolling people in bowling balls.
You're the real deal. That's why you would be an asset to anybody that hires you. I mean, in the sense that that's forward.
I quote you on that.
Yeah, you can quote that. Yeah, I would highly recommend it. But and why I bring that up is that, like, one day, who walks into Mackenzie Field in Holyoke but Warren Spahn?
Really? Because I covered our Blazer baseball games up there.
Well, he was there as an Angels pitching coach.
Wow.
And there was an Angel that was a big prospect at the time, Dennis Rasmussen, who, I mean, he's getting his baseball pension, but there were always scouts or instructors trying to improve these guys. And Warren Spahn wasn't much bigger than me. And I'm not very, I'm probably 5'8", 5'9". And he, walks in. And then another time, and this would have been really from my childhood, is when I was like a little kid, the big home run hitters were, Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, and Eddie Matthews, who gets kind of lost in baseball. And Eddie Matthews showed, I think he was with Oakland, and he's in the batting cage showing a guy, like how to hit to left field kind of thing. And boy, you get guys for this podcast down there, that they, you get farm directors, you get general managers. Who is the Yard Goats associated with now?
They're with the Rockies.
The Rockies.
Yeah. So like a couple of years ago, they had like Brendan Rodgers came through. Ryan McMahon, who I'm surprised he just got a huge contract too. He got a $90 million contract, which is nuts.
Yeah, that's. Have you had the voice? Have you ever done play-by-play?
Yeah, I did it for when I was at Elms. I did their play-by-play, and then I did it at UMass Dartmouth when I was there. Is where I started. All my college spots, I launched broadcasting.
Oh no, you'd be excellent at that.
Thank you.
I don't have the voice. That's, before I wanted to be a sports writer, well, I wanted to be a priest, and then I started liking girls, and
that's how it always goes, right?
Huh?
That's how it always ends up, right?
Yeah, it does. And even if they don't like you back, but
it's all about the chase. It's all about the chase.
But so then I said, well, I'll be a broadcaster. I'll be, a radio voice. And then, a friend of mine had a tape recorder and had a terrible voice, and I realized, and it was only then in the 60s when newspapers were kings, it'd sell papers in front of a church on Sunday. And I don't know, they had like 3 or 4 New York papers. They had the Hartford paper. They had the Worcester paper. They had like 3 Boston papers. And I'd read the sports sections every Sunday between masses. And I said, I could do this.
There you go.
I was, and the thing that probably turned the key of like why I wanted to do it is, you're probably well aware of Peter Gammons, who,
of course, yeah.
Changed
Met
baseball.
Peter Gammons at Fenway once.
Oh, great man. He changed all of the kind of coverage that we like now. Is that he wasn't the Red Sox beat reporter at the time, but every Sunday, especially in the off season, he had a column called Majoring in the Minors. And it was all about minor league guys coming up. And I couldn't wait for that because he did not just Red Sox prospects, but other prospects. So you got a head start on who was the next best thing. And
yeah, it goes back to where we're talking about the minors. Like, it's just, again, part of being a fan is just knowing your guys in the minors and who's coming up and who's going to be the future. And then other little notes I put for the book too. I gained, I guess, a lot of respect for guys, Joe Adcock, Hank Aaron, of course, and Lou Brock, because they did something I didn't think was feasible. They hit home runs to center field at the Polo Grounds, which I've played many, many years of MLB The Show on my PlayStation, and I've never, ever done that. So for those three guys to be able to do it, I give them much kudos.
It's funny you bring up the Polo Grounds because there's this guy that used to be my boss at the Springfield newspapers, and he grew up in New York and was a Giants fan. He was like the Giants fan that never got over the Giants leaving. And I found somewhere on Facebook by accident the dimensions. And so just this week, I was thinking about center field that, he's a Red Sox fan now. Don't hold it against him, that.
Of course, never.
And he said, "Oh, JBJ in his prime would love to
find a gap, maybe.
Like run after ball
out there. Oh my God, it'd be amazing."
But Joe, even you saying Joe Adcock gave me like a goosebump. Like the New York Times is brilliant in so many ways, but one thing they're absolutely great about is that they really have a lot of the baseball players who died, their obits.
Mm-hmm.
And like in the last couple of weeks, they had Ralph Terry. Have you ever heard of Ralph Terry?
I've not.
Ralph Terry was a good Yankee pitcher who won 20 games at least a couple of times. Good Yankee pitcher. But he gave up Bill Mazeroski's 1960 home run. And, like unbelievable, because the Yankees had outscored the Pirates, let's say something like 40-12 or some ridiculous kind of thing. Well, and then Ralph Terry, the next year, the Yankees, 2 years later, he comes in against the Giants, and it's a tight game, one-run game. And Willie McCovey, I guess on TV, it looks like he's tied the game anyways, but it was Ralph Terry who threw the pitch and Bobby Richardson made the catch, and the Yankees win the World Series this time. So the Times is amazing. And Ralph Terry then ended up being a professional golfer. He never won any major tournaments, but he was good enough to play the tour. And again, history is history. What did you major in?
Communications. Something simple.
Yeah.
No math required. Something simple, no math required.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, because what's funny too is I fell into a little bit of a YouTube rabbit hole last night as well while I was putting the finishing touches on your book and watching college basketball. It was a lot of these older home runs. You talk about Mazeroski's home run and like Bobby Thompson's home run. You can actually like watch them now. Like they've all somehow found the archive footage, and you can go like on YouTube. Because before I'd only seen like the Maz home run. It was just the home run and that's it. But now you can like see him rounding the bases, and there's like fans on the field. And that was another thing, watching home runs from back in the day. Like especially I remember the Hank Aaron home run vividly of the two guys who run on the field next to him, and like that just doesn't happen anymore.
No. Well, it's a kind of thing. I have a
player
friend.
Safety, of course, but just seeing those moments, it just kind of made baseball feel so special.
To me, all my eggs are in the baseball basket. So let's say, like, I had prepared myself that there was going to be no baseball till late May. So
I watch Korean baseball.
Oh, I watch that. Sure, I do. Yeah, no, I like baseball. Let's put this way: if kids were playing a catch across the street, I'd go see if my glove was in any kind of shape and see if we could. Expand the game. Yeah, what is it? For me, baseball is I think about it way more than an adult should think about. I think about it, but you should be the voice of somebody.
I appreciate that, Tommy. Well,
No,
we've chatted for like over an hour now, so I'm gonna kind of wrap us up here. But I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I definitely would love to catch up with you sometime during the season. Maybe we can wrap a little bit about the year, how it's going. Also, I want to hear about. I heard you went to Abu Dhabi in your days as a reporter. I'd love to hear about what went on there. So I definitely think we can catch up again for sure.
I'll let you go. This is in Abu Dhabi. I met a guy who was from Scotland, and he was brand new there, and he said he wanted to start a new like hobby or obsession when he got to Abu Dhabi. So this guy's from Scotland, and he decides to become a baseball fan and a Red Sox fan.
There you go.
and he's still he's now in this country, but he's like us now. You know what I mean? He's full of superstitions, and which we think will work. So, you know.
Well, definitely, I'd love to hear the whole story here. Maybe in a couple months, we'll kind of wrap up near the All-Star break, see how some teams are looking, and see how the year's going. Before I let you go, what's your World Series prediction here, start of the year?
You know, I think it'll be the Blue Jays and the Dodgers.
Good choices.
But
similar jerseys.
Yeah.
Not a great jersey World Series, I'd say. You always like some kind of like contrasting jerseys, maybe some throwbacks.
Yeah. No, but you know, my opinion may change. You know, like on April. You know, sometimes you know, but those are the teams that I think are like loaded.
Yeah.
And
sure.
and the Dodgers just talk about a team that spends money, but they don't seem to care.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll hold you to that right now, Tommy, and we'll catch up in a few weeks and see how things are looking. All right.
You're very
and again, let's all remember Tommy's book re-releasing on paperback May 17th. Dinger's 101 most memorable home runs in baseball history. Go grab it. I recommend it for your summer reads. It's a good one.
Oh, you're very kind.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy, for joining us.
Thank you.